So, Justin, tell me about your trip, my friend.
Okay. Well, the last time we were talking about Hermetic principles, and we had like three more to go.
Yep.
And I explained I was going to head out to Virgin Islands and kind of share the Hermetic principles and horsemanship. So I did it. So I'll begin with how it all happened.
Hmm.
I was sitting around one day, not too long ago, and just reading and thinking, and I started thinking about what is wrong in the world. And I think I'm tapping on it. I'll just say that. But
Yeah.
people have forgotten how to visualize, how to imagine. Remember when we were kids, like from age probably 2 to 5, 5 to 7, it's all these transformations going on, but you knew what you wanted. I want to jump in this mud puddle, and you just go do it. I want to do
Yeah.
this, and you just go do it. There's no hesitation, no reservation. It's just unlimited play. You're just like
Mm.
in this mind of, I want to check this out. I want to experience this. I want to do this. Well, as we get programmed and conditioned, with society, we start to lose the ability to, visualize like when we were kids or imagine like when we were kids. So I was sitting around the other day and I was thinking, man, I teach a lot of these principles in my horsemanship, and I life coach a lot of different people. And I'm always telling them, just visualize what you want, imagine what you want, and whatever you think about, you bring about. I mean, you will think and become what you think and
Yeah.
do. So, and then form habits, and then you create a character.
Hmm.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I've been preaching this, I've been teaching this. I'm just going to like imagine that I go somewhere in the world, and I'm going to introduce myself to a horse, and then we're going to ride in my bitless bridle. And and I just started piecing these thoughts together, and then it became
Hmm.
a thread of thought. And then I just increased the concentration on that. And then I just gained some momentum. The vibration came up, the rhythm started to get easier. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing this form. And then I started feeling it like through emotion. Like, oh, I
Hmm.
can feel that wind on my face. I can feel that water. I can feel the sunlight. I can actually feel the plane flying there and landing. So I reached out to this company out in Virgin Islands and just shot them an email, basically explaining what I wanted to do, just like I explained to you. I gave them my vision. And I just figured, what's the worst thing they'll do is they'll just say no, and I'll go ask someone else. Well,
Yep.
they responded like 3 or 4 days later with yes, yes, and yes. And I
Cool.
thought, wow, okay, what's going on here? Let's check this out. And I'll shorten this since we're on a little bit of a time crunch.
Sure.
Yeah. I said, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go. And I just packed my bag, grabbed my bitless bridle, jumped on an airplane. I went out there. Uh, I should back up a little bit. In the email exchange, it was some dates that I wanted didn't coincide with their dates, and they had an opportunity for me to come out and teach a leadership course to Montessori children.
Oh,
I was like,
cool.
yeah, definitely want to do that because then I can just like really do what I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
man, it was just amazing. We introduced myself to a horse that was having trouble, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Real quick,
Um,
I want to ask you first because this is kind of like it's like the way you describe it is like you manifested this dream coming into reality. How long, like you started to think you wanted to do it, you started to have the vision. How long before you started to kind of think I want to do this before it actually happened?
Man, from first thought to going, I probably have the date written down in my book because I journal, I write it down too, because
Yeah.
I'll have thoughts, and sometimes they're just they're just stream of consciousness, coming out on paper. But then when I start thinking with intention,
Hmm.
that was probably 2 weeks before it happened.
Oh, so you pulled you this idea came up and then 2 weeks later it was happening?
Yeah.
Wow. See the way you tell the story, I thought maybe it was like a year or two, like I started thinking about it, I thought about it for a while. No, you thought about it and 2 weeks later you were there.
Yeah.
That
No,
is
it's
cool,
it was
man.
it was fast. It was really quick. And it
That's
was
real
like,
cool.
okay, this is a meant to be thing, right? So I'm
Mhm.
gonna follow through with it. I'm gonna go check into it, check it out.
Yeah.
So many synchronicities lined up with this, Jeff, to where it was just like, man, if you can control reality, if you've ever wanted to try,
Yeah.
uh, that's what I wanted to try. And I did it.
That's so
Man,
cool,
it got
man.
even down to details. Like in the airplane, I'm taking notes of how it's going to happen. When we went and did it, I shared my notes with, after we did everything, I shared my notes with the lady that has the farm and the horses. And it was written like the day before, because on my notes it gives a date and time,
Yeah.
and we did it exactly as I wrote it.
See, you're really the author of your own reality. It's like
Yeah.
some people say we're in a simulation, and I say in my opinion, it is a simulation, but it's not a computer. It is a
Yep.
spiritual simulation.
Yeah.
And
I've
and it's
heard
like
it.
once you start to kind of realize that, then you can also kind of you realize that you have more control over it than some people think.
Yeah. I've heard it said we're living in a simulation like a matrix or something. I'm here to tell you or
Yeah.
your listeners that if you think it and you concentrate on it enough, it has no choice. The universe has no choice but to give you what you want, what you desire, what you're thinking about, and manifesting into a reality. I mean, I've done it so many times. I wrote a book about it. You have my book. I built a
Yeah.
house. You know,
Yeah.
my wife and I together, we built this house three times. We did it three times, three different houses. But it's like, yeah, if you just really think about what you want and then write it down, that actually helps. It will come about. I mean, almost to the letter. And I just tested it. It's an actual factual did it. And it's like, okay, now I want to bring other people there. So we've booked June. We're doing a clinic, and
You're
it's
going
the
back to the same location.
yeah,
Very
yeah. And
cool.
so I'll finish with what the story was heading on with that horse. So this horse was having trouble, right?
Yeah,
And
so just to catch everyone back up, so you manifest going down there and then you find a wild horse?
no, it was one of their horses that they had in the string, which is
Okay.
what would be termed as a participant in the tour business. You know, he was a horse that was taking tourists to do what we do,
Yep.
but he they couldn't use him for about a month prior to me getting there. He just was not an alignment, we'll call it.
Mm,
Wasn't wanting to do it, having
hmm.
some issues. So I got that horse and started playing with him and taught the class to the children with him. And then literally went and did what we do, which ride down through they have a little 100-acre mountain right into the sea. And we rode around, went down into the sea and swam with the horse. And they told me he wouldn't go into the sea. He quit wanting to. He's like, no, won't do it. But he did. He went right in. He had a blast. I mean, I did a backflip off of his back, Jeff.
Whoa. You can do a backflip off of a horse?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
yes. I even got the picture to prove it. Of course, it
Oh,
doesn't really show the
did you send me
real
that
good
photo?
backflip.
Yeah,
What's that?
did you send me that photo?
I might have. It was like mid jump.
Oh, cool, man. Cool.
Yeah.
So okay, so you manifested this dream into reality to go down to the Virgin Islands or travel somewhere. It ends up being the Virgin Islands. You find a horse and you kind of this was the horse that everyone said was going to be a big problem. And how did you tell me where it goes from there? How did you heal the horse and what else did you do while you were there? What kind of stuff were you doing?
Well, I followed these Hermetic principles. I get in alignment with the laws of the universe, basically. You know, I'm going to check in with the things that I can control, which is myself. So go inward,
Mm,
thoughts, emotions, inner pathway communication, and then attitude, you know, or my posture, and then action is an outward pathway of communication. So in essence, I can present myself to the horse in front of the students. I mean, this is essentially what happened. The students are standing there and I'm explaining what's going on. It's like we've got to align ourselves, present what it is we expect from the horse. Now, this is microcosm to what I'm explaining in the overall. It's like align yourself, present to the universe of what you expect. If you're not in alignment, it won't come, but it's not desirable maybe, but you need to make
So
changes, present again
are you
in the macro.
teaching are you teaching hermetic principles to the class, to the kids?
Yes,
And what age are you teaching down there?
they're middle school.
Middle school? Amazing. How did they receive the hermetic principles? Did you tell them directly this is what this is, or were you kind of a little bit more like sly about it?
I guess you could call it sly because it's like you got to attract without promoting in a lot of ways. So
Mhm.
the principles I would explain cause and effect, vibration.
Mhm.
So like when I send vibration down the lead rope to ask the horse to back up one step, the vibration changes. That's how the horse picks up on what it is you want. So if I go in at say a scale of 1 to 10 on the vibrational frequency of moving that rope, I'm going to go in on like a 1 and then increase the intensity or the frequency of the vibration up to a 2, 3, a 4, 5, a 6. And then he takes a step back and then release it. And then you get
Mhm.
into a rhythm, another principle of the Hermetics. You get a rhythm going. So we're going to start with a 1 or 2 rhythmically, increasing the vibrational frequency, get a desirable response from the horse, then release, then repeat it, then release, then repeat it. And it's rhythmic at that point. So then you're playing with cause and effect. He feels the cause, the vibration coming down the lead rope. And then the effect is move the hoof. And then the effect of that is release of the pressure or the intensity of the vibration. So I explain it that way. And not like class, here we go. We're going to learn about 7 Hermetic principles.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And if we were to come about that, then we would. But it's just so much easier to you can get a sense of these principles. You can't really get an understanding of it until you experience it. And so
Yeah.
horsemanship allows a person to experience it, feel it, and then get a true essence of it, because that's where sense and understanding merge together, and you get
Yeah.
the true essence of these principles. And that's in a macrocosm with horsemanship. You get on their back. So a person's concentration can increase a lot when they're on the back of a horse and they're really understanding, like, I am giving inputs to this 1,000-pound muscle, and we're turning left and turning right, and we're getting into rhythm, and
Mhm.
we understand the vibrational frequencies, and we understand cause and effect, and we understand gender, principle of gender, masculine, feminine. Do I need to be in my intuitive side, or do I need to be in my do it build masculine side, or do I need to balance those? Am I too off on one or the other? So then we just slide back and forth through these 7 Hermetic principles in the 3 planes of existence, which there are more, but we'll just focus on 3, physical plane, the mental plane, and the spiritual plane. We could talk
Mhm.
about emotional plane too, but it's like, yeah, we got to balance all of these things, move in harmony, which is an agreement. So correspondence, the how things work together, as above, so below, so as within, so without. So what am I thinking within me? What am I feeling within me? What am I presenting to the horse? And then observe feedback from the horse, make necessary changes, do it again. It's a feedback loop. So then in that macrocosm of a feedback loop with a horse, you can really transition over into the macro away from the horse. So in all 5 areas of our life, our health, our wealth, our relationships, happiness, spirituality, those can be really intense with really increased with intention, enhanced with intention. That's the whole
Mhm.
purpose.
Mhm. Amazing. So was the class that you taught, was it all people who had never ridden before? Were they new to it, or tell me a little bit
New.
about the class? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, these kids are new to it. In fact, I've got some videos that are coming out with the kids and stuff
Mhm.
we're going to put together. Um, I have one actually. I'll send it to you. It's pretty cool. But it's like these children are kind of higher minded kids anyway,
Okay.
and they're really smart. Is what I'm trying to say. So they grasped it really well, and I was like, wow. And then each child would get, horsemanship training, so to speak, but
Mhm.
interact with the horse themselves with what I showed them. So basically, I'm teaching a leadership class,
Yeah.
but showing them like, hey, in order to really be the leader, one has to go within themselves and then care more about the one they're leading than being the leader, to create
Hmm.
willingness in the follower to want to follow the leader. So they grasped it so good, man. And then they're very interactive kids, so you can ask them questions and they give you feedback. So it's like it was so harmonious, I'll just say. And it just flowed in such a great direction. I was like, man, I got to bring people to see this because that island, it's very special. It's like a sacred, set apart place where the vibrational frequency of the island is so different than like mainland America, because there's things going on. There's always buzzing, honking, and moving. It's just like this. There's this underlying tone of vibration,
Hmm.
and I can feel it because I've separated myself from it for before when I was in the mountains. So going back
Yeah.
to this island, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect place where I could allow somebody to come that truly wants to discover themselves, go inward, present outward, and have the least amount of distractions possible. Because you're on this island. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And you're
You're
with
you're always
horses.
returning to nature in your various adventures.
Yes. And that's it, man. Spirituality is peaked in nature. I figured that out long ago. Spirituality will peak in nature. If a person is feeling like I'm spiritually called, mysticism is getting interesting, something about it. Man, I'm telling you, all of the senses, five senses, which there's six, but we'll talk about that. Five senses are peaked out. They're enhanced. Your sense of smell, your sense of touch, sense of taste, all of them are at max optimal levels. You know, we have sensory receptors in our body for
Mm.
all of it. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, those are all at peak levels, but you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just oversensitive. It's just, no, I'm actually aware. I have such a higher awareness here. And then you can develop that sixth sense, which is where you start to get answers to questions you didn't even know to ask. And maybe you did. And then you get the answers. It's like, I feel bliss. This must be what bliss is, where you're at the peak happiness level. And then you're interacting with a living being, a horse, and they're responding to you in a manner that was just described that opposite of what they would normally do. So it's like, okay, well, this is a very effective measure as to we're on the right track, so to speak. And that's what I love about it. That's absolutely what I love about it, because you can actually have control over something, which is ourselves,
Hmm.
present it, and then attract to you what it is you were wanting or desiring.
So the sixth sense, I want to touch on that more. So you're saying like when you raise your awareness in your five senses through maybe just being more aware or going into nature or different spiritual practices, then you can get a sixth sense that kind of kicks in, and that's like an intuition or like a connection to a higher communication or almost like a telepathy or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, if any doubt or confusion were to come into me,
Hmm.
I'll go into a meditative state.
Yeah. Do you
I'll go in
meditate?
and it's eye open. So I've done it
Okay.
with horses for so many times, so many years. Like if a confusion or doubt or a frustration comes, I'll go get with a horse, and then I can start going through processes and procedures, we'll call it, for lack of better explanation, to find where it is. It's like, oh, tension in my shoulders was doing this. Huh. Okay, that's one aspect. But then as you follow this and keep going, and then you start regulating breathing, heart rate, and then you start realizing, okay, I was creating my frustration, my confusion, and my doubt, my anxiety. I was doing it. So now that I've gone like the other side of it to go back to find it, and this is tough to explain, but maybe I'm not explaining it the best way. Once I go through those processes and procedures and balance out physically, then mentally, then the answers come. It's like you get into alignment. So the answers that you need, you're not going to get them by forcing it or chasing it. You're going to attract it. The only
Hmm.
way that you can attract it is to get in alignment. with harmony and agreement with
Mhm.
nature, with the universe, with yourself. But it's like, yeah, it sounds easy, right? But
Yeah.
it's not necessarily easy for people that don't have access to information. And that's why I want to take people to this island and give them firsthand, like, here you go. This is the best way I can deliver this.
Yeah,
I
you
do
know,
hear that.
I think it's interesting that instead of just telling people, "Hey, these are what the seven principles are," you kind of make it into something real and grounded in this reality through teaching horsemanship using those principles. So that way they're kind of getting it in their head without if you kind of teach it to them just by reading it from a book, it sounds very like esoteric and it's almost a little sometimes hard to grasp. But if you bring it into something that you're actually doing and seeing happen in real time by learning to say work with a 1,000 pound animal, then it kind of it goes into the mind a little bit easier, I'm guessing.
And you guess right. Because when a person experiences it, they actually block or lock it into memory. It's
Exactly.
it's like it's like it's like this. You can say something and talk, but that kind of is just a vapor in the wind. Maybe some of it will be retained, and there's scientific studies to tell you what percentage of a conversation or a lecture is retained by people. I think it's like 5%. They can watch a movie and remember like 5% of the whole movie. Maybe
Hmm.
a little more in some cases, but for me, it's like 2%. My wife's always like, "Ah, you don't remember?" I'm like, "No, I don't." But if I experience it, I'll remember like 90%. And
Yeah.
that's like a scientifically proven fact too. People that do something experience it on a whole new level. So I've learned this before I actually knew how to teach it. I learned it myself. I went into the mountains playing with wild horses, and then I had to like grasp around in the dark, so to speak, but learn these principles, cause and effect. That's a pretty easy one to learn with horses because you do something, you get to instant see what happens. But then you learn rhythm, you learn timing, you learn vibrational frequency, you learn the polarity,
Mm.
the contrast. It's like I've played with so many different horses. Yeah, the class is the same horse, but this horse won't respond the same way this horse does. Even utilizing the same techniques, I have to make adjustments. Horses are very adaptable to thousands of different people because I've watched them, my own stream. But people are not adaptable to 1,000 different horses because
Hmm.
they've atrophied in what I'm trying to teach people. And that's that visualization, imagination. The very thing that separates us from the horse is what brings us to the horse to connect with the horse.
Mm.
Some guy sat there looking at a wild herd of horses and imagined that he could be on their back riding. That's how it starts. So it's like, okay, well, if if the thing that separates me from the horse, because everything else is the same. We got bodies, we got blood, we got hearts, we got teeth, we got hair, bone. I mean, all these things are the same. What the only thing I've found that separates us is the visualization and imagination ability we have. The
Mm.
divine connection, the first principle, the all is mind, the universe is mental. We have the ability to know that. And maybe they do too. Maybe they do. I'm not going to argue with anybody. If they're like, well, they know that. It's like, okay. But the one thing I don't think my horse does is imagine a big fancy barn and, lots of, I don't know. Maybe he does,
Yeah.
but
He doesn't imagine taking a trip to somewhere that he's never been before.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
no, I don't, I wouldn't buy that.
yeah.
But that very thing connects us. So that's what the beautiful piece is, because I can imagine and then I can bring my horse along with me, and then we can manifest it into a reality together. Because essentially, I could not do what I do without them. They wouldn't do what we're doing without me. So
Hmm.
it's like, okay, this is cool. The
Yeah,
all is mind, the universe is mental. That very
yeah.
first principle.
So, by the way, last episode was a lot of fun. I think we covered four or
Four,
five.
four of them.
Yeah, and I have in my notes here, Tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but the ones that I think we didn't cover are the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, and the principle of gender.
Yes.
And I'm curious if we can get into these. I had a few thoughts. I've been taking some notes, and preparing to cover more of the principles. So let me just read a little bit of what I have here and kind of tell me, maybe you can reflect what your thoughts are on my notes here.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I think it's number four is the principle of rhythm, or it's number five.
Well, that would probably be five.
Yeah, okay, number five. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, and all things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything.
Yeah.
So, how do you see the principle of rhythm manifesting in horse training and in human behavior?
Okay. So there's a whole gamut. We can stay on the physical plane first. So playing with horses is never going to be the same. So in my book, I wrote, the same man will never sit on the same horse twice. And the reason is, you may be riding a horse at night. You may be riding them in the day, maybe riding when it's cold, maybe riding when it's hot, maybe going up a mountain, maybe going down a mountain. So that rhythm is really understood in horsemanship because you've got to make adjustments. It's ever changing. So the rhythm is, you're breathing. So that's rhythmic. Your heart rate, that's rhythmic. That horse's heart may start beating faster and you've got to like help them get comfortable to slow it down. Or the rhythm is real important in riding because those legs are extensions of your body. The horse's legs are extensions of your own body. So whenever you start to move together in rhythm, you're feeling the beats of those hooves hit the ground. So when you go to ask a question, you're not going to ask a question when his hoof is in the wrong spot. So in other words, if his hoof hits the ground, you don't ask to turn left. When it comes up in the air, ask to turn left, and then he can move his hoof in the direction you want to go. So rhythm is real important to get into and an understanding. So in breathing, breathing in, breathing out. If my rhythm is off and it's short and shallow, and I don't know, I'm not aware of it, and I'm bringing it into a conscious awareness. Well, the horse can hear, obviously 3 to 4 feet away when I'm sitting on his back, and he can hear that my breathing is off. So that has an effect. That's a cause. Then I stabilize my breathing intentionally. It transmits energy. It transfers energy. Horse picks up on it. So then his breathing can stabilize. Heart rate, muscle. A lot goes into it. Moving and merging breathing together is very important in the rhythm. So when we're interacting with a horse on the physical plane, we're observing nonverbal communications. The horse's rhythmic breathing is not, it's out of rhythm. It's short and shallow. You get a verbal, cue to do a change, change a cause for a different effect. Um, Maybe there's so many, it'd be tough to go through every little thing, but maybe
Yeah,
for an example, you've been walking along and then something startled your horse. Well, his breathing changed, his heart rate changed, and his muscle tension changed. And then the speed of the direction that we're going is an opposite of where we want to go. So you've got to start course correcting and then balance out the rhythm again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. And then in that's rhythm.
yeah,
So it's very important in the physical plane, but then the mental plane, or what are my thoughts? I'm on the back of this 1,000-pound muscle. Am I 100% connected in the feedback loop, we call it, with the horse, where I'm paying attention to everything me and the horse related, regardless of outside influences that come along when we're together? So that rhythm comes into play again in the mental plane. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm here with you 100%, and then my mind drifts, and then the horse does something subtle and brings me back, and then you continue to do that, and then you'll understand in the mental realm, rhythm is really important of how much you can pay attention to your horse, regardless of outside influences, then you get distracted, then you bring it back, then you, how long can you do it again? Then it goes away. Even that's a rhythm. So the horse picks up on these rhythms that are unseen. He knows when we're not paying attention, but sometimes I don't. But he'll do something to bring my awareness back to it. Sometimes it's gently, sometimes it's obvious. It's like, oh, I was not paying attention. But mentally, so the physical, mental plane, being able to slide back and forth through those, very important. And then the spiritual plane. It's like, okay, I've exhausted all five senses of trying to find an answer. I'm not real sure what to do. Well, you follow the processes and procedures best you can. And then in the spiritual plane, the answers come. You attract them to you. Your imagination, your creativity, all of the things that you need are there. Because, see, I can't do a person's push ups for them. I can't get them into a feedback loop and keep them there. I can do it for myself. And then with practice, I can master it, so to speak. But a person has to understand these principles and how to apply them. When they can master themselves through these seven Hermetic principles, they can create the reality they want.
Hmm.
They can manifest what their vision, what their imagination is into a reality in all five areas of their life.
Yeah. I think too with I'm thinking about the principle of rhythm, and it kind of makes me think about like the ups and downs, the waves of life. There's highs and lows, there's goods and there's bads. And I'm wondering if like through learning horsemanship, does this help us to kind of ride those waves? Like, sometimes you're trying to you're trying to learn how to master working with this horse, and maybe someone who's new maybe isn't getting it. And I'm wondering if this can also help to teach us to ride those waves of life rather than resisting the negative or giving up on something, and kind of teach you to stick with it and recognize the ups and downs, and the rhythm of life is going to have ups and downs.
Well, they've helped me understand release judgment, go into love.
Hmm.
Judgment's very restrictive, and you said good and bad. That's like a value judgment.
Okay, yeah.
People will describe weather as bad. They did it the other day. I went to the beach for 5 days with my wife, and we went into a restaurant, and the person was like, "Oh, we had horrible weather. It was so bad." And I thought, huh, I probably used to think that too before I knew that that's a beautiful thing. Because how do we get contrast? If we
Yeah.
don't appreciate a beautiful bluebird day, why would you appreciate that if you didn't have, a windy, cold, rainy, cloudy, as some people describe as bad day?
That's a very good point. Bad is like that's your own projection. Like that's your own personal kind of
Perception.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all as it's meant to be.
Yeah. So if a person understands these principles and can rise above the duality of good and bad,
Yeah.
then they can realize, all right, the all is mind. The universe is mental. How I think is what I will basically believe, and my beliefs are going to determine my experience in this life. It's just that simple. And
Yeah.
people will refuse, and it's not even refuse, they atrophy in the ability to change perception from a different perspective.
Yeah. And it's
It's going
like
to change them.
if you perceive everything as bad, oh, that's bad weather, this is bad, then that's kind of what your reality starts to become, and you feel that. But if
Yeah.
you just sort of go to a state of acceptance, or maybe everything is actually good, everything is how it's supposed to be. But I guess would good be a perception as well, or a value judgment as well, kind of based on like what your ego wants, if something is good or bad, you know?
Well, when you can slide through the mental, physical, and spiritual planes with ease, that's how you master these principles. So
Yeah.
there's even subconsciousness, or there's like seven sub principles to each mentalism, spiritualism, and physicalism. It gets deep, and I won't go
Yeah.
way into that because I personally don't even have a good handle on it myself. I'm
Yeah.
still a student and I
Yeah.
want to know. So anybody who's listening to this be like, man, that dude, he's on the right track. And I
I
know
feel
I am.
like I
I
feel like
feel like
these
I
would I feel like these would be some interesting like chat GPT questions. You know,
yes.
tell me about
Much
like the seven subcategories of each plane of existence.
Yeah, do it. I don't do it because I don't know how. But my buddies that I coach and I talk to, they tell me they do, and they're like, "Whoa, it gets deep, Justin." And it reminds me of what you tell us in the horsemanship, like don't get stuck in a routine, And see, people they 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 get stuck in a routine, and
Hmm.
all they have to do is break that routine. And it's like, okay, well, how? Well, in horsemanship, I teach them to do what's called a stop exercise. It's literally just stop and breathe, and you're changing the thought pattern habits that have come in subconsciously over time. And then you course correct those to where you can have the thoughts you want and then focus with intention. And then when you can do that with consistency, we're not looking for perfection. We just need consistency. So rather than a routine, so to speak, that you've fallen into, you create a, maybe we could call it a new routine of change, and then embrace change, and then just be consistent. And that's what horsemanship is, because you never know what you're going to get in a horse. They can't really talk to you per se. So when a new horse comes, I have to like get myself in alignment, but I'm observing this horse unfold before me, and I'm willing to change based on what I did with the last horse. Doesn't even matter. This is a different horse. Or based on what I did with, the last horse, this may give me information for this horse. So it's the willingness to change the routine, so to speak, and become what is needed in order to manifest the reality you want. So desirable behavior in a horse, for instance, I will be willing to change and present, observe feedback. If it's not desirable, make changes, do it again. The good and bad value judgments left long ago in horsemanship, because they're all good if we want to give them that.
Hmm.
We invited them into the human element. And see, I learned this thing about how things atrophy in horses and humans. And I wrote about it in my book, A Horse to Guide Me. A little plug there. But it's like horses in domestication have atrophied from a lot of these principles I'm talking about because they haven't had to use them. Survival instincts, they kind of fade. So they depend on the human to feed them. They depend on, the human for pretty much everything, water, you name it,
Hmm.
care, vaccines, deworming. See, wild horses, they don't go out there and get horseshoes. They don't get deworming. They've got to think to survive. Well, people are that way too in the domestication process. They get dependent on technology. They get dependent on the microwave. They get dependent on electricity, the car. So exercise goes out the window because you can just jump in a car and drive.
Yeah.
All of these things have a cause and effect and a polarity. It's like, oh, the polar opposite to this. So I say all this to circle back to, how do we rise above giving things value judgments, good and bad?
Yeah.
Well, we go into that spiritual realm and realize that our dependencies on the physical realm are genuinely futile. Uh, to put it blunt, it's like, do you really need that to be happy? And then now you have a polar opposite way of look at it. It's like, I'm only going to be happy if my car has air conditioning. You know what I mean? It's just for an example.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like, okay, what's the polar opposite of that? It doesn't have air conditioning. Well, why are you not happy? People don't really think about things like that. It's just, if I had that, it'd make me happy. That's materialism. That's what America pushes in the commercialization of like, buy this, buy this. It'll make you
Consumerism.
happy. But you can rise above that and go into mental realm, go into the spiritual realm, and realize air conditioning has little to nothing to create my happiness.
Yeah.
It's so low on the
Do
on
you
the
do you
scale.
do you feel like you have figured out a way do you feel like you're able to move between the planes yourself, spiritual, mental, and physical? And
Yeah.
if so, is that process like a mental process?
Yeah, it's a practice, I tell you,
Mhm.
because when you can look back on your old self, or here, I'll just speak in my, when I can look back on my old self, sometimes I cringe, like, can't believe I was like that. But
Yeah.
that's okay because it lets me know that I've grown, that I've changed, that I've become something different than that. So I can see the contrast. I can see the polarity shift, as what it was to now, as what I was to now. So yes, being able to move through the physical, mental, and spiritual planes seamlessly based on these hermetic principles, based on, looking through these tiny little quarter-inch windows at life, I can go, oh wow, I'm observing me now. I'm not this. I'm
Yeah.
actually a soul inhabiting this, and now I can guide and direct this. And it's so much easier when you can go slide between those three planes of existence. And we'll go even into the emotional plane. That's an
Yeah.
important one.
Yeah.
And maybe it's overlooked and maybe it's not talked about enough. But when you have a thought that's backed by an emotion, you're pretty much unstoppable in
Hmm.
either polarity. So, like, you have a thought and you're backed by an emotion of happiness, you want to get something done, you're going to do it. And then you
Yeah.
go over to the other polarity. You have a thought that's backed by an emotion of anger. It's the same energies, just different scales. And you can
Yeah.
still probably accomplish the same thing, but it's got to be, the other thing's got to be in alignment, rhythm, timing, cause and effect,
And
because
don't they say that for manifesting you want to have a thought synchronized with an emotion so you can feel that so you can feel what it will feel like to
yeah,
manifest what you're trying to bring into reality.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people describe things in a lot of different ways, but when I was manifesting that trip,
Hmm.
I wanted to go into what I'll call love. i
Yeah.
wanted i wanted a love frequency. I was like, man, I have no selfish desire at this point. I want to go up into love and share and give and then receive what comes. I want to attract what I present. I want to give and then receive. And it worked beyond measure. I mean, you can't
Hmm.
measure. So let me go into this one thing, synchronicity that happened.
Sure.
We're talking about the seven Hermetic principles today. We talked about them before I went on that trip. The room that I stayed in, they had this painting, and it was a representation of the seven Hermetic principles.
No way.
Wow, I slept like 4 feet from this painting. I'll text it to you and show you. And
Yeah,
I was just
cool.
mesmerized. I was like, how could this synchronicity be? The place that I'm staying, the place that I was drawn to, has this painting. I mean, it had the as above,
It,
so as so
it's
below.
like that. It to me, it's kind of like that sixth sense. It's like the communication is coming in, like winking at you. You know?
Yeah. And then the spiritual plane of existence that we all have, people don't realize. A lot of people don't realize. Then that's where more information came. And then it's like, but here's a revelation. Okay. We've talked up to this point about all we'll call it the happy, fuzzy feeling things, right?
Uh
Well,
huh.
what's the shadow to that? What's the polarity to that?
Yeah.
And here's what came to me on this trip. It's like, okay, basically, Justin, you've reached a new level. And now with that level comes great responsibility. You can wield this power one way or the other, and it is a choice. And now you must be conscious of that choice. And it was like a devastating feeling, but a rewarding feeling at the same time. It's almost like winning some kind of medal, but then now you've got to go, like, you've got to prove, not necessarily prove worthy, but you've got a whole new responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a
And
bigger
it's like, okay,
responsibility.
so I've got this key. I've got a whole bunch of keys, and I can climb up this giant, and I can unlock, whatever I need.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. So it was like, okay, I'm going to create this clinic, and I'm going to invite 5 people, 5 meaning transformation. And I'm going to put it out there. This podcast is one of the ways that I'm doing it. And the 5 people that show up, I'm going to show them these keys, like, straight up. I'm going to give it, I'm going to gift it. I'm going to be like, here you go, man. I'm giving to you in days what took me years to understand and get. And it's like, I'm going to do it. And that was the whole purpose, like from
I would
start to
love
finish.
I would love to see after you do your would you call it a retreat?
Yeah,
Um,
you could call it that.
after you do your retreat, I would love to see, maybe even talk to one of the five people to see if they have been able to implement what you teach. And I can just imagine someone's going to come, oh my God, I learned these things from Justin, and I went to this horsemanship retreat, and when I got back, I was like manifesting the reality of my dreams.
Yeah. I agree. I teach this at my school and it's valuable. And people are they're in society, they're in their grind, they got the hum in the background of what's going on. They come out here and they get a taste, they get a piece of it. So yeah, we could call it a retreat because what I call it was a basically a tropical island adventure, a horsemanship adventure clinic.
Yeah.
So tropical island horsemanship adventure. And it's the same thing as here at my school. We do a horsemanship adventure in the micro, and then they get to go, and then they come back, and then they get to go, and they form a rhythm. They come in 2 hours a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and then go back into. So they get the contrast of that and that rhythmic flow because they're like, I'm stepping out, and I kind of set the stage here at my farm. It's like a sanctuary. It's gated, it's very private, and it's not in town, so you don't hear a lot of the town. And they come in here, and then we start to bring into conscious awareness of nature. The breeze, the sun, the horse, the flow, and then they go back into their norm. This is actually an interrupt. So this is a dominant thought pattern interrupt. The patterns that have formed habits in their day to day subconsciously, they're not aware of them. Bring
Hmm.
them here, then they become conscious, and then they can change the subconscious. So going to a 3 day immersion, it's going to be life changing for people. I take it
Yeah.
for granted sometimes, but that was one of the lessons I learned there. It's like, yeah, you got this. You cannot take this for granted. You cannot take this for granted. And
So
it's like,
the
okay,
the immersion's coming up in June, right?
June 10th, 11th, and 12th. My
And if
website
yeah, I was
explains
gonna say,
everything.
yeah, how do people sign up if they're interested?
AmericanMustangSchool.com, and
Mhm.
then click on Tropical Horsemanship Adventure, and then follow the flow chart, I guess you call it.
Yeah,
My web girl puts it all together. She did a good job. So
cool.
yeah,
And is that one going to be for just the people who sign up, or is there people that are down there at the island who will be participating as well?
no. So I got the company to shut down their normal business, and it's just going to be for our clinic participants, catered to them, specifically designed for them. Yeah,
Cool, cool.
yeah.
Um, by the way, do you want to cover? Should we cover another principle or two? We got two more on our list.
Yeah, cause and effect. We kind of
Yeah,
have bumped along them, but yeah, cause and effect. It's a
yeah,
good one.
because I got a couple questions. I made a couple notes that I wanted to talk to you about that one. So number six, the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. So I got a two-part question. One is like kind of in the Mustang realm, and one is more like macro. So with that said, about the principle of cause and effect, um, how in working with horses, how do you see the cause and effect relationship play out? Is the first part of the question. Second part is, do you believe free will plays a role in this principle, or are we more subject to unseen causes shaping our lives?
I love it. Okay, so the first one, cause and effect in the Mustang world. See, the beautiful thing about cause and effect that I'm not sure I can explain this without somebody experiencing it is you get to understand what time is. Because cause and effect in the Mustang world, like playing with a horse, you get to do something and see the instant effect. I'm talking seamless, can't even say it as fast as sometimes it happens. And in the macro, people they'll see a cause, but 2 or 3 years down the road, there's the effect. So there's a lot of distractions in there, and based on time, and they don't ever really understand the effect. And we could talk about drinking alcohol. You take one drink 6 years ago, And then, you find yourself like, man, I'm drinking like 5 beers a day, so cause and effect. Didn't
Hmm.
really understand that that was happening because of the time. So yeah, in horsemanship, you get to see cause and effect. You get to really understand time. So your second part, free will, horsemanship is where I can hand my free will over to the horse because they're going to teach me about it. They're going to teach me how to control it. So free will, yeah, I've got it, but only if I'm in alignment with these seven hermetic principles, with the universe, because my free will is to understand. My free will is to learn and grow and develop or not. So if I do, then I get to create. I'm part of, see, we're fractals of the one.
Hmm.
The energy that made the solar system is the same energy that makes the atoms in my body, as above, so below. So it's like, okay, I can be a part of this. Yes, I can align. I can consciously say, I want to align with the principles and I want to be part of creating. So cause and effect. So if I live in cause or I live in effect is going to determine the experiences I'm going to have in my life. So programming and conditioning to society, letting others dictate or determine, I'm going to live in the effect of that. Their cause, I'm the effect. I'm the product of the effect, so to speak. Or I can change it and say, wait, I don't want a 30-year mortgage on my house. How do I change that? Oh, well, I go get a book and I read it and I get 10 years of information in one book from a person and it took me 2 hours to read it and then I can apply it and then I can live in the cause and then I build a house and then that's the effect and I don't have a mortgage, which is Latin for death grip. So
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
okay, now this information starts flooding in because I made one choice to live in cause. So free will is, where can you hand your free will over to learn about it? Well, that's horsemanship. And what I meant is to learn to control it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can control our free will. I've got friends that committed suicide. That was their free will. They did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Now we can have free will to, we can control our free will, but we have to align. Just that simple.
Yeah, I believe we have free will as well, but I've heard, I've heard the argument that like everything is so based on cause and effect that like, it's like it's almost like describing the atoms as like ping pong balls in a box and like if it bounces this way, then it's guaranteed to keep bouncing in this other way. But I think that we kind of have the free will to like it's like throwing a ping pong ball down a hallway, but like we have the free will to kind of move down the hallway however we choose to.
I love it. Look at the perspective from the horse. So trade places with a horse, treat them as you'd want to be treated if the roles were reversed. And that's in essence what happens. That horse is going to treat me the way I treat him. He has free will. So I ask a horse to ground tie with a little lightweight rope. Please don't move. Please don't run away. Their free will is to make the choice to stand there and do it. But their free will is shown sometimes when they just walk away because they can drag it. So it's like, okay, now what do I have to change in the other principles? Yeah, cause and effect is there, but so are the other principles. So
Mm,
I've either got to go into my mind and I've got to balance the gender energies, which
yeah.
are intuition, creativity, or physically do, those type things. One just as a short example. But it's like, okay, I can get more creative. Well, maybe the horse needs me to do a few more questions to get their attention on me to become more important than what their attention is on, which was somebody walked up to the gate and they walked over to sniff them. It's like, no, I got to become more important than that person. Curiosity. I got to keep his curiosity here so he'll stay ground tied on this lightweight little rope because we never force a horse to submit with pain or fear. See, all these things tie into this to where you can realize, yeah, he has free will. I have free will. We have to create willingness in each of us to engage in a circular feedback loop to where it's in harmony, which just means agreement. And then it can manifest through rhythm, through habit, form a habit. If we don't like the desired outcomes, make changes to create new habits. And then that forms character. So I have calm, quiet thinking horses that are ready, willing, and available to participate in anything that we go do because they don't have restrictions in their mind of fear, doubt, anxiety, confusion. They're only curious. They're only content. They're only happy because the tensions in their bodies and the tensions in their minds, I'll take it away as quick as I start to see it, feel it. When the horse notices I'm doing that, they're drawn to me. Why? It's a benefit, comfort. When they're discomfort, I give them comfort. They draw to me. That's why any leader will have followers.
Yeah. So you mentioned the word harmony, which I think leads us quite well to our final principle, the principle of gender. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Um, I got like a couple of questions for you on that one. The principle of gender, number seven, everything has its masculine and feminine principles. How does the balance of masculine and feminine energy show up in horsemanship? Um, and how would you say think people can cultivate a healthier relationship with both energies within themselves?
Okay. The best way I can describe this in the simplest form based on time is when I did a camp for children with cancer.
Mm.
And I'll just take, let me just state that gender isn't necessarily to be, um, associated with like sex.
Yeah.
It's an energy. And a man has masculine and feminine energy within a man, and a woman has masculine, feminine energy within her. Creation has a masculine, feminine energy, the giving, the receiving. So going into horsemanship, whenever we did the camp for children with cancer, I would watch horses, like a female horse, just so happened she was a female, do something for a child that I couldn't train the horse to do. And it was more of a nurturing, kind, slow, gentle way with this particular child. And then the next week, she would be right back to her normal self, bouncing along, doing whatever. That horse could pick up on energies within the child. And the child was apprehensive, we'll just say that, scared, not necessarily into it, so to speak. Well,
Mhm.
this horse changed and then pinpointed what energies needed to change in the child and then gave her confidence. And then those energies within that child started to change. And then she started coming out in a more of a physical posture. We'll call it attitude, but it's posture. And that's that outer pathway of communication. So when the child started posturing at a more assertive manner, the attitude changed. I watched this, I witnessed this, but I did not train the horse to do this. So in horsemanship, energies, masculine and feminine, they've got to be balanced. And the horse will pick up on the imbalance and will do things to help us balance. Now, I could go personal experiences many, many times. I was over masculine. I was taught, forced to submit, use muscle, create fear in the horse. That's traditional training practices that are wrong. And when I say wrong, they're on the opposite polarity of what we do today. We're creating willingness, not forcing compliance, willing compliance. So that principle of gender, the masculine, feminine balances within the horse, within the person, they have to synchronize. They will synchronize. And when they do, then I think then and only then can a relationship truly be built on whatever it is you desire to do. If you want to teach a horse to do whatever, it doesn't matter. But that law of principle of gender has to be pretty balanced because nothing ever happened with me and my Mustangs until that one was balanced. I did not know this in the early days, and I'm chasing horses around. I'm trying to force them to do things. They're 1,000 pounds, and they'll let you know real quick. Hey, masculine stuff, you're going too extreme with it, and I'm here to,
Mm.
show you the contrast. So then, as a small child, I got the first experience with balancing my own principle of gender.
Okay.
I had a little pony and I wanted him to do something and he wouldn't do it. So I start spanking on him. I start pulling on him. He starts going away from me. I start pulling harder. He starts dragging me and I'm getting drugged across the pasture and cactus and do this and that. And then I never let go, but I got back up. He stopped. I got back up. I'm kind of bleeding and bloody and crying. You know, I'm like 8, 9 years old, trying to get this little pony to do what I want. And then I didn't know what to do, Jeff. So I just stopped. I balanced myself and breathing. That's all I needed to do. And then I just started singing to him in a
Oh,
quiet, calm, singing, nurturing voice. And then he followed me and did what I wanted to do.
wow. That's
And
cool.
I was like, oh my gosh, man. And I had forgotten about that until I started later in life teaching other people how to train and doing things. And then it's like when the body and this body, horse and human body, start to synchronize, thought and emotion, attitude, posturing, action, when all of those are synchronizing internally and externally, that principle of gender becomes really understood better than I can explain it to you in English. That's
Yeah.
why these coaching with horses is so powerful because
Yeah.
we talked about this, but guys that haven't cried in 2 years, they tap into an emotion, their body starts crying, and then they're questioning out loud. I don't really know why I'm crying. I don't even know why. And it's
Yeah.
like that horse just balanced your masculine, feminine energies. You've been too
Yeah.
masculine for too long, rightly so, in some of the jobs these military guys have to do. But it's like, yeah, you can let your feminine side come. That's natural, and
I
it's a
appreciate
beautiful thing to watch.
I appreciate what you said too, that it's this principle is not about sex. It's
No,
about every being has masculine and feminine energies, and everyone has a certain balance. Um, I'm curious. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree that there's been an imbalance in society. Do you think do you think it's starting to kind of balance itself out, or do you think there are some ways that it can balance itself out for a more harmonious kind of reality for everyone?
I'll say yes. Yes, it can, and yes, it is balancing itself out. And maybe I'm getting into a bias because I've started attracting more like-minded thinkers, believers in
Mhm.
this realm. And it's a matter of a person, questioning it. Like you mentioned, are we in a simulation? Most people don't even question that. But it's interesting to ponder.
Yeah,
The thing is, Scripture talks about the kingdom of God is within you. And it's like, okay, a lot of these other, we'll call them religions or spiritualities, they say go within. And I think that's what needs to happen because behaviors aren't going to change until the thoughts and the hearts of the person are affected. And then the behavior can change. Um, when we can understand Hermetic principles and we can look at three planes of existence, politics will never enter in as to affect my inner and outer peace and harmony, tranquility and balance. I can rise above that so quickly. But I have friends that they really struggle. They get pinpoint focus on something and they're in that closet that we talked about last time. They don't know that there's a doorknob you can open and just come out of that and then
hmm
rise above it. And then you can shut the door and leave that stuff in that closet. And it's like that in anything, religion, in relationships. I mean, all of the things that we're programmed and conditioned to do by society, that low level ego, low level consciousness, we can ascend that. That's like study seven chakras, study the seven seals in Revelation. Those coincide to where it's a revealing as you come up. You're getting secrets. Secrets are getting revealed. Seek and you shall find. Reap what you sow. All of these terms are pointing to something. But if a person doesn't look within, they'll never find them without. Because the Hermetic principles, as above, so below, as within, so without. Whatever I think about, I bring about. Whatever I
yeah,
choose to see and think on will manifest into reality. When I walk around in life and I see something that triggers me emotionally, and then I start having thoughts that are motivated by that emotion, I have the power to transmute that energy into like, oh, yeah, that's right. I can just cruise on up in here in the mental plane and be like, ah, don't matter. You know,
Yeah.
I just love sharing this with people because it's almost like a parallel dimension that runs alongside of us,
Yeah.
you know, and you've heard of people with different abilities to see things that others can't or hear things that others can't. And those are all frequencies, you know, vibrational frequency. Taste something that other people can't taste, you know, it's like just perceptions are enhanced in some and dull in others. This is the way to go inward and to create an enhancement of your reality. It is a matter of making the choice and
Yeah.
then put it into practice. When a person can master these seven hermetic principles, they've mastered themselves.
Before we wrap up, do you want to just remind everyone, like a little bit of information about, if they want it, if they're interested in learning from you and maybe going on the immersion and getting all this ability to manifest, where can they find that?
Okay. So take a deep breath, everybody, because this is some really cool information. We're going to travel on an airplane to an exotic island, Virgin Islands. Going to introduce you to a horse, going to get to present yourself in the most truthful manner you could ever possibly imagine to a living being that has no judgment, only cares how much you care. In order to prove that to him, you care about yourself. And you present, and then you get to experience something that you've probably never even imagined, and then get on their back and ride down this little mountain into the sea, swim with horses, immerse in the sunshine and the breeze, and feel what it is I'm trying to explain to you. And it'll pour over you to where you just change something. You interrupted a thought pattern, interrupted a dominant frequency that you've been vibrating at. And then you have the ability to transmute that and change it into what you want with the help of nature. Whenever I speak to people, I say, hey, nature has hidden secrets. It's up to us to go find them. The horses are like guides. They will guide you into nature and help you discover the secrets that are hidden from us. Where we're doing that is in the Virgin Islands. The specific location will be revealed to you after you sign up. And it's AmericanMustangSchool.com. And then you just click on Tropical Horsemanship Adventure and sign up. That's it.
Sounds good, my friend. We'll leave it there. Thanks again for coming on.